Now, about 3 weeks ago, I posted a video where I bought a fake GTX 1050 Ti off of Wish. And by the end of the video, where I established that it wasn't working and it was in fact a GTX 450, I posed the question of, should I try and fix this graphics card or just throw it in the crap bucket where it belongs? And I guess I kind of fixed it, maybe? Now what I need to do in today's video is essentially the GPU equivalent of brain surgery. Now, I'm really overselling it here because it's not actually that complicated, but basically what's happening is that this graphics card, this fake graphics card from Wish, thinks that it's a GTX 1050 Ti, but it is in fact a GTX 450. So what we need to do is poke around in its little brain to convince it that it is the graphics card that it actually is. Now again, this is a very vague explanation, and basically what I'm doing is flashing a new BIOS onto it. Now I just want to point out that nothing that I'm doing here is new. In fact, a channel called Phil's Computer Labs, which I did point out in a previous video, has done something very similar like this, and he's actually fixed a fake GTX 960, which was actually also a GTX 450, although his has a different PCB. So if you want a different take on this, go check out his video. And I kind of followed a combination of his instructions and instructions found on overclocker.net in the forums over there with some guy who kind of gave information about how to flash a new BIOS onto a graphics card. So with those two sources, you could also flash a new BIOS onto a fake graphics card that you buy. But as you'll see by the end of this video, it doesn't always quite work out the way that you want it to. And if you don't follow those instructions very, very carefully, in the way that, again, I might not have followed carefully enough, you could damage your components or just waste a lot of time in the way that I did. And I was such a dumbass. When I realized what I was doing wrong, it was quite a shock to the system. Now, in order to flash a new BIOS straight onto the BIOS chip of the graphics card, you need a couple of things. Now, the first one is this, which is a USB BIOS programmer. And it's a really cool little device, and the reason that I really like it is because of this lever. Now, this is a really stupid reason to like it, but it's such a satisfying little lever. And then the second thing that I need is this BIOS clip. Now, I don't know if that's exactly what it's called, but this basically attaches straight to the BIOS chip on the graphics card, and then this plugs into the USB BIOS programmer, and then you flip that really handy little lever, and now you can interface with the BIOS chip. Now, these two things you can actually buy off of eBay, and they're not particularly expensive. Mine took really long to come. I ordered it off of eBay and it took like 3 weeks to get here, and then obviously, just as my luck always goes, right after I got them, I Googled it, and there was an Amazon.ca link, which was actually, you could get this on Amazon Prime, and it would have come like a day after I ordered it. So that just kind of sets the stage for the kind of terrible things that happened through the process of trying to flash this new BIOS onto the graphics card. Now, the first thing that you need to do is locate the BIOS chip on the graphics card. Now, in my case, this was actually quite difficult to do because there were 4 BIOS-looking chips and none of them had like a standard BIOS chip name. So what I ended up doing, and it's probably not the best thing to do, was just go through a process of elimination. So I hooked up the BIOS programmer to all 4 of these chips, and none of them gave me a reading that made any sense. In fact, there was only one chip that gave me a reading that wasn't just a bunch of zeros. So I just decided that was the BIOS chip. And then I tried for about 3 hours to flash a BIOS to this chip, and the software kept crashing and it just didn't work. So then I decided to stop myself there and just say, Dawid, just remember, you're a little bit of a dumbass, right? So maybe you did something wrong. The fact that it's not working doesn't mean that there's some conspiracy where the people who made this graphics card encrypted the BIOS or whatever. So I went through the process again, and then I looked at this little programmer, and I realized that, oh, you can actually plug it in 2 ways around. So I swapped it around and then tried all of the chips again, got no readings, and then promptly decided that I did it the right way around the first time, so turned it back, and then spent another 2 or 3 hours trying to flash a BIOS to this chip that I decided was the BIOS. And then, after literally 5 hours of using this software, I kind of noticed something. Now, look at this page and see if you notice it. There is literally a picture of the USB BIOS programmer and which way around you need to put the clip in. And obviously I had it the wrong way around. And well, long story short is I spent about 5 hours trying to program a BIOS onto what is a power delivery control chip. This is just such a typical Dawid thing to do, where you just power ahead with your stupid idea, convinced that you're right, even though it doesn't work. But anyway, so then I found the correct BIOS chip and I could start loading BIOSes and the software didn't crash and everything worked. But the graphics card didn't work. So I tried a BIOS, it didn't work. I tried another BIOS, it didn't work. And then finally I found a BIOS that kind of worked. I mean, I got a display output, but it looked like that, which obviously isn't what you want. And then I finally found a BIOS that worked. And this meant that I could boot into Windows, I could install a driver onto the PC, and it actually recognized it as a GTX 450. At this point, I was very excited. I tweeted, in fact, about how, look, I finally fixed the Wish graphics card. And then I loaded up Dota and I was very brave. I kind of queue up to go into a ranked match, which if you play Dota, you'll understand that if you don't get into that match, it's a bit of a disaster. And well, the game crashed. And I tried again and the game crashed again. So I had to hurriedly switch over to a different PC to play that match so that I didn't lose MMR and get banned and all of that crap. So after Dota didn't work, I tried to play Counter-Strike Go, which also I got into the menu, tried to queue up a game and it would crash. So CSGO didn't work either. So then I tried an older driver for the graphics card. That didn't work either. And then I finally decided to try an older game, which was less demanding. So I installed Half-Life 2, and Half-Life 2 got a little bit further into the game, but it also crashed. So then I was like, okay, the final thing that I'm going to try is launch Half-Life 2 at the lowest settings available. And that worked! Look! There's me playing some Half-Life 2. No way. So you can play Half-Life on medium settings. Oh shit, that's all. So yes, I did technically get the Wish GTX 450 to run a game. Admittedly, the game is very old and I could only run it at low settings, otherwise it also crashed. Which didn't really satisfy me. So I thought I had to make it work even better. Because why doesn't CSGO work? It's essentially based on the same engine as Half-Life 2, and I couldn't even get into the video settings to turn it down to low settings. So I decided to have a look at more BIOSes and see if I could find one that worked properly. I ended up trying 10 different BIOSes, as you can see here from my paper towel list. I wrote it up on a paper towel because I couldn't find paper at hand. And honestly, the only one that worked was the one that I could get Half-Life 2 running on. Maybe it's not the BIOS that's the issue. Maybe there's something else wrong. Now, over the last 2 days, I spent quite a lot of time looking at photos of GTX 450s when looking for various BIOS versions to try. And the thing that I noticed is that all of the GTX 450s I could find on the internet had a 6-pin PCI Express power plug, and mine doesn't. Mine has the holes for it, but the actual plug is missing. So then I went onto a website to see what the actual TDP is of a GTX 450. And according to this website, it's 106 watts. And then I researched how much power a PCI Express 2 connector can actually carry. And according to the internet, it's 75 watts. So I kind of think there's my problem, right? The PCI Express connector can't get enough power to the GPU, and that's why it keeps crashing under heavier loads than Half-Life 2 at medium. And that means that in my opinion, that leaves one option on how to fix this GTX 450, and that's to solder on a 6-pin PCI Express power plug. I mean, the holes are there, I could technically do it. So let me know in the comment section below, do you want me to take a soldering iron to my GTX 450, which I don't think is gonna end amazingly well, considering how much I struggled to just install a new BIOS on it. But let me know if you want to see that. I think it may be an entertaining video, and I think with that, it brings me to the end of my first full attempt to get this GPU working. And I think I kind of succeeded. I mean, I got Half-Life 2 to run. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, do like and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with your friends if you think they'd enjoy it. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well if you like. And until the next video, bye-bye.